Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Genshin Impact character review series. We take a look at each character in the game, review them, and I give my opinions on them. Today's character is Xiao, a 5-star Anemo polearm user who is considered to be the top on the top 3 DPS characters in the whole game, and for a good reason. But before we get into his kit, we won't know that. Why is that so true? But yeah, in my opinion, as a sort of like first opinion, yeah, he's really good at dealing damage. Xiao is just crazy. And I do like Xiao because he does use a mechanic that isn't so wildly used among every other character, and it's nice and fun to have him be so unique. By again allowing him to get advantage of that specific mechanic, which we'll mention as we get into his kit. So, why don't we? So starting off with his auto attacks, he's a polearm user, so he attacks pretty quickly. As far as I know, polearm users are the fastest at attacking. He has like a 5 to 6 attack combo, so that's a bit more than the usual. The usual is like 4 or 5, he has like 6. But his attacks are pretty much fine, nothing really to note on the normal attacks. His charge attack though, he's a polearm user, and many of the polearm users have their own special charge attack instead of sharing one. And yeah, Xiao's charge attack is this sort of like claw attack, which is interesting, but it's a charge attack nonetheless, so it doesn't really do anything special. So yeah, normal attacks, nothing to note. Nice claw attack, I guess. So moving on to his skill. So Xiao's elemental skill is this dash that he does, which deals a very good amount of damage. It has some really insane multipliers. You can also cast it in the air, and that's basically it. When you can of course like dash through enemies and deal damage to them that way. The only thing to note about this ability is that it has a certain range where if you dash through an enemy and you're close to them, you will dash a long distance away. Like, it has a minimum dash range, so you should be a bit careful with like overshooting enemies when you dash through them, because otherwise you're gonna have to like sprint back and waste some stamina, or you're gonna have to use his second dash, because he has 2 charges of it. Yes, he has 2 charges of the skill, so you can go dash and deal like 40,000 damage. And I mean, it's nice, though you should be a bit careful with like using his charges. You always want to have one around, or like don't use them back to back immediately. Go dash and then go dash again, because each charge has a 10 seconds cooldown. So, you want to balance that a bit, and you don't want to wait like 20 seconds to get both of your charges back to then dash again. So, balance it out, because this ability also generates a lot of particles. So if you're able to balance the timing of your dashes, you'll be generating particles in a good way so that you can get your ult faster. Which, let's get into that ultimate. So Xiao's ultimate, he like wears his demonic mask, and he now infuses his weapon with Anemo, and he's also able to jump really high. And this is where everything comes in this ult. So what this ult buffs, it doesn't give him any extra damage in like Anemo damage or anything. It gives him extra plunging attack damage. And that's where the whole jumping, being able to jump really high comes from, where you just start bungee jumping when you activate your ult to just go crazy on damage. The amount of plunging attack damage that the ult gives you, alongside with your normal plunging damage, because that's how this ultimate works. It's not separate damage. It's still your normal plunging attack damage buffed through extra Anemo damage and again extra plunging attack damage from the ultimate, and it's just such insane damage amounts. Like, you just go bungee jumping, and through a Xiao ultimate you'll easily be able to get like 10 to 15 like jumps and plunging attacks, unless you get cryo affected, and that's when you lose a bit of attack speed. But still, like, his AoE is really big on his plunge attack as well, and it's just insane amounts of damage. The only thing to note is that while this ultimate is active, you do start losing like 3% of your current HP, and as you level up the ultimate, that amount will decrease. So you go like 3%, 2.5%, or like 2% or 2.2, somewhere like that. And yeah, so be sure to keep Xiao alive if you have the ultimate active. If you're using the Staff of Homa, which its effect needs you to be below like 70% HP in order to have an extra buff active. The only support to really use there is Bennett. You'll get the attack buff, and then Bennett will also keep you around that 70% health through his healing. So you'll basically have the Staff of Homa effect always active. Else, if you're not using Staff of Homa, basically every other support works, but I would like to mention Chi-Chi. The thing is that with Bennett, Jean, and Diona, their healing is tied to an area, and also you need to be in the area and on top of the area to get the heal tick. With Xiao, because he's always bungee jumping, he isn't exactly on top of he isn't standing on the circle, and it is very much possible to just miss the healing ticks as you are bungee jumping and dealing damage. But with someone like Barbara or Chi-Chi, you are tying the heal to Xiao, because both of Barbara and Chi-Chi's skills are tied to the active character and they do those healing ticks. But Chi-Chi as well ties her healing to an enemy through her talismans. So while Xiao is bungee jumping, even if the skill doesn't tick and heal Xiao, he will 100% heal from hitting the enemy with his plunging attacks. And he will heal through the talisman. So the best support to heal Xiao while he's ulting is Chi-Chi, because I have seen many of my friends who don't have Chi-Chi or didn't use Barbara with Xiao. I have seen them use Bennett, and while they were bungee jumping, they died. They died because enemies below still attacked, and again, the healing just didn't tick, but the damage from the attack of the enemies did tick. They did get hit, and they died. Especially during the hell that was the floor 12 second chamber with the Oceanid creatures that just completely ganked you. I mean, there you just had... I saw so many of my friends rage at those Oceanids because they just couldn't keep their Xiao alive while the freaking ducks had their area of effect damage and everyone else was just killing the Xiao. But my Chi-Chi was able to freeze all the Oceanids and keep my Xiao alive. So yeah, I think that Chi-Chi is the best support to go to Xiao if the focus is to heal Xiao as he's ulting so that he doesn't die. But yeah, other things to note about the ult. Be sure to have some element out on the field, because you're always going to be dealing anemo damage, you're always going to be dealing swirl if there's an element on the field, so that's a bit of extra damage. But the thing is that with that extra damage and with the swirl, you'll be generating particles through swirl and through killing enemies so that you'll get your ultimate faster, because it does have an 80 energy cost. As we said, the skill does generate a lot of particles, but you still need to generate some particles back while you're ulting. And the only way to do that is to kill enemies or swirl, because actually using the skill while ulting won't generate particles. And it's a rule tied to Xiao to, well, not completely make him overpowered, because if Xiao was able to just easily generate particles while ulting, he'll have his ultimate 100% up, and that would have been crazy. Just a crazy amount of damage. Like, he would have been 100% the top DPS. And yeah, in my opinion, Xiao is the best DPS, but I easily understand how Xiao gets out DPS'd by someone like Hu Tao and Ganyu, because they don't rely on an 80 energy cost ability to deal damage. Ganyu just charge attacks, Hu Tao just uses Vaporize alongside her infused pyro and HP scaling, while Xiao needs that 80 energy cost and needs to activate his ultimate and then just go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. But yeah, but in my opinion, I really like his damage potential. Like, it's crazy. And as we said, the ultimate is tied to your normal auto attacks. So if you want to increase the damage you deal during your ultimate, be sure to also level up your attacks. It does matter. The base number of your plunging attack percentage does matter, because that's where the ult adds up its own numbers. So, have a good balance on, well, every talent. Although if you really don't care about the skill's damage, which to be honest you should, it can easily deal like 24,000 damage in one dash every 10 seconds. That's a lot of damage. And yeah, so be sure to balance out your ultimate and your attack talent so that you maximize your damage. So yeah, so what roles can Xiao fulfill? He's a main or sub DPS. Sub DPS as in, like, he's not always out on the field. He's out on the field to dash 2 times, get the particles. If his ult is up, he's gonna go crazy. Because if you are playing him as a more of a main DPS, he's most likely more out on the field. So yeah, sub DPS, he's there to dash and ult. Main DPS, he's also there to do some hits, because again, he attacks fast. And he has if you build him as a main DPS, he's gonna deal some good attack damage. So what are the artifact sets then that fit Xiao? Well, the only combination of artifact sets that everybody uses, because nothing else really suits him, is a 2-piece Gladiator's Finale for 18% attack bonus, and then a 2-piece Viridescent for the extra Anemo damage, because that's the only thing that Xiao needs. Just some extra attack and some extra Anemo damage bonus, because through the plunging attack that you're dealing while ulting, it's raw Anemo damage. It doesn't get infused like someone like Venti or Kazuha does. Like, Xiao's plunging attack damage may cause swirl, but they won't get infused themselves. It's still Anemo damage, so 2-piece Viridescent. You don't need the 4-piece Viridescent set, because Xiao doesn't depend on swirl to deal damage, or he doesn't need to reduce the resistance of enemies. He just needs to deal Anemo damage. And the 4-piece Viridescent set doesn't really help. Again, he doesn't rely on swirl damage. So yeah, and that's really it. Like, you can't use anything else. As far as I know, the 2-piece Noble set doesn't really work, or it gets completely out DPS'd by the 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Viridescent set. So again, there isn't much choice, unfortunately. Although now it still hasn't been tested. There is the new Inazuma set that has the 2-piece effect that's the same as the Gladiator, which is a 18% attack bonus. And then the 4-piece set of that new Inazuma one is that if you have more than 15 energy and you use your skill, you will lose 15 energy, and then your normal, charged, and plunging attack damage will increase like 50% for 10 seconds. Here's the thing. This hasn't been tested yet. There is speculation that this set will fit Xiao if you are able to, to be able to compensate for that 15 energy loss. If you have someone like Sucrose to be a battery for Xiao, then for sure I think that this set most likely will work, but it's gonna be hard. Again, testing hasn't been done yet because the set isn't out and people haven't farmed it yet, but we will need some testing to see that if 2 Xiao dashes give you enough energy to, again, balance out that 15 energy loss, so that you get more than 15 energy out of one dash, because if you do dashes 2 times, you will lose 30 energy. If we're able to test and, figure out that, Xiao is able to generate more energy than he loses, then perhaps this set will become the new standard, because that extra plunging attack damage will increase Xiao's DPS by a lot. Or, this new set will be useful if you're using someone like a, Kazuha or Sucrose as a Nemo battery for Xiao, although still you will need to use Xiao's skill to get that, to get the attack bonus. So it's gonna be, dash with Xiao, then use then use Sucrose to give energy to Xiao back, and then it's gonna be a bit hard. It's only 10 seconds of the duration on that buff, so you might not be able to fully utilize it if you are using this battery technique. Again, testing hasn't been done. We will see if this new Inazuma set replaces the 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Viridescent standard. So yeah, that is for artifact sets. Again, he unfortunately doesn't have much choice, because you can't buff him anyway else, because there is no set to like buff plunging attack damage in any way, and except for the new set that is coming out. So yeah, let's talk weapons then. For Xiao, there are a few options. So let's start off. Okay, we have the Black Cliff Pole, very good choice. Gives crit damage, so you're balancing out your crit damage and crit rate. And Xiao does have a crit rate ascension stat, so you get, it's a bit easier to balance out the stats. So Black Cliff will help you balance out crit damage and crit rate. Its effect is really good because, Xiao is a crazy DPS, so he'll easily get the 3 stacks of the Black Cliff Pole and deal some really good damage. The Crescent Pike is a weapon you can craft. So out of the 2 weapons you can craft, which is the Crescent Pike and the Prototype Star Glitter, I think the Crescent Pike is a bit better. Better base attack than the Prototype Star Glitter. It does give a physical damage bonus, which doesn't help when you're ulting, or it doesn't help with your your elemental skills damage. But if you're using Xiao as a main DPS, so he's out on the field and also dealing like normal attacks while you wait for your ult to get up, or your cooldown on your skill to come back up, the physical damage bonus will help. And the effect also doesn't help with plunging attack damage, but again, its effect is that whenever you get a elemental orb or particle, you increase your normal and charge attack damage. So with the Crescent Pike, you'll dash, get some energy, and then you just start hitting until your ult is back up and deal some extra damage. So yeah, for a main DPS Xiao, if you're going completely free to play and have nothing else, then the Crescent Pike is really the only choice, because the Prototype Star Glitter gives you energy recharge, which is nice, but it's not that much of a damage bonus exactly. Again, Xiao has an 80 energy cost, but the skill does generate a lot of particles, and if you have a battery, you don't need energy recharge. And once again, the Prototype Star Glitter has less base attack than the Crescent Pike, so your overall attack will be less. And the Prototype Star Glitter has the same effect sort of as the Crescent Pike, so it's just worse than the Crescent Pike in every way, really. So yeah, Crescent Pike out of the 2 craftable weapons, I must say. Dragon's Bane is not for Xiao. He doesn't use it. He doesn't need Elemental Mastery. Deathmatch. So Deathmatch has really low base attack. It does give crit rate, so if you're having problems with crit rate and crit damage, then, balancing them out, you can use Deathmatch. And its effect is a permanent attack increase, so Deathmatch isn't the worst option. I think the Black Cliff Pole is a bit better, because again, Xiao naturally gets crit rate, so it's better to get more crit damage out of your weapon. And again, the Black Cliff Pole has a better effect and has a hence better base attack compared to Deathmatch. But if you want, you can easily use Deathmatch. Lithic Spear, a very, very, very good choice actually for Xiao. Extremely good base attack and gives attack percent. So while it might not help you balance out your crit rate and crit damage through its substat, it gives you some extra attacks, so you're still dealing a good amount of damage. And its effect is that for every character that is in your party and they're from Liyue, you gain extra attack and crit rate. So through its effect, if you have a Liyue focused party with Xiao, because Xiao also counts as a Liyue character, you will easily balance out your crit rate. You'll really easily, reach that like floor of crit rate that, is sort of the standard, which is around 50%. 50% is like the minimum crit rate that every DPS should have, really. So, with the Lithic Spear, you'll easily get that if you have a Liyue, if you have a party full of Liyue characters. So yeah, Lithic Spear is a very, very, very good option for Xiao. That base attack really helps. That's really good. Other ones, the Favonius Lance, I mean, it has good base attack, but it's again really like energy recharge focused, and Xiao doesn't need that. I think again the Crescent Pike is a better option, especially if Xiao is a main DPS and is still dealing, normal attacks while you wait on your other skills and supports. The Dragon Spine Spear isn't for Xiao at all. So we get on to 5 stars. The best weapon, of course, is Staff of Homa. I mean, nothing beats Staff of Homa. There is, of course, the Jade Spear. So why not compare the Jade Spear to Staff of Homa? Well, the Jade Spear has better base attack, but Jade Spear gives crit rate while Staff of Homa gives crit damage. As we said, Xiao gets natural crit rate, so Staff of Homa fits a bit better to give him the crit damage that he lacks. And then the effects. While the Staff of Homa effect is very much really passive, it gives you extra HP and then gives you attack based on your HP, on your max HP. And you don't really need to do something to get this buff. Just have a lot of HP. And while Xiao doesn't necessarily, scale off of HP, he doesn't use an HP sans, he uses an attack sans for Xiao. He still gets a lot of HP through, bad artifact rolls. The 20% HP increase through Staff of Homa is still more attack. And then the thing is that through Staff of Homa's effect, where if your HP drops below a certain point, the attack buff gets even better. And well, what does Xiao do? Well, his ultimate causes self-damage, so he can easily keep the Staff of Homa effect active. So that's why it fits really well on him. The Jade Spear isn't a bad option. It's the second best option, and it doesn't necessarily trail, it's like really close to Staff of Homa, but still Staff of Homa is a really busted weapon. But yeah, like the thing with Jade Spear is that to get its attack buff, you need to start doing hits. So before you use your ultimate with Xiao, you will need to bring him out and then start dealing hits to get the stacks and then ult. While with the Staff of Homa, you can easily just quick swap to Xiao and ult immediately. That's the only problem that Jade Spear has, is that it's more, in order to get its effect, you need to be more active, while with Staff of Homa, it's completely passive. The Skyward Spine, good base attack, but it does give energy recharge. Its effect is nice. Again, its effect is nice. But if you have the Lithic Spear, I wouldn't switch to Skyward Spine. Heck, even with the Black Cliff Pole or the Deathmatch, I wouldn't necessarily switch to the Skyward Spine. But if you don't have anything else and you got yourself a Skyward Spine, then sure, you can use it. The base attack is really nice and the effect is okay. It gives a bit of crit rate. The attack speed is a nice buff. Xiao attacks really fast because he's a polearm user and he's gonna attack even faster. And its effect is nice with the whole vacuum blade, so it can help deal some good AoE damage with your skill, because the skill has a bit of an AoE. So yeah, that is it for weapons. Staff of Homa is the best. It's a really busted weapon on every polearm character basically. The Jade Spear is very closely behind Staff of Homa. And then the Skyward Spine is an option if you don't have any other polearm available. But if you have the Lithic Spear or the Black Cliff Pole, then Skyward Spine it doesn't fit that much. But yeah, that is it for Xiao. I mean, what can I say? He's just really crazy, and I really love how, he's a nice and special character that uses plunging attacks because no one else does. You have Albedo, you have Venti that can allow characters to do some plunging attacks. But the thing is that, until, the time you have to, you waste to have, stand in the middle of Albedo's flower, and then it rises up, and then you jump, and then you plunging attack. You will lose too much of your time and DPS if you do that. Same with Venti. Until, you hold the skill with Venti, you fly up, you plunging attack down, and then you switch to your main DPS, you then fly back up, you then plunging attack. It's too much wasted time. Yes, the now available Kazuha has his elemental skill focused around plunging attacks, but he's also another Anemo character, damn it. I want to see a non-Anemo character use plunging attacks as their main DPS source, or really good DPS source, because Kazuha uses mostly swirl to deal damage, not plunging attacks, but it is nicely tied into his kit. But I just want to see some other element use it, not just Anemo. So yeah, and I really like if MiHoYo starts doing characters like that, where they use some really crazy mechanic that isn't wildly used. That's the reason why I myself I'm gonna pull for Ayaka, because her dash oriented gameplay is nice and unique that piques my interest. So that is it from me. Xiao is incredibly good, just godlike DPS, and he is fun to play. You're always gonna be bungee jumping. So yeah, that is it for me. Our next character is Kaching. See you then.